As Andrew Clennell alluded to a bit earlier this hour, the budget impact of the Stage 3 tax cuts has been upgraded today. We already knew the impact of the changes coming in the middle of next year would see the government collect $69 billion less in tax revenue over the forward estimates. Today, analysis from the Parliamentary Budget Office has revealed the total reduction in revenue over a decade has risen from around $254 billion to $313 billion. The government has committed to going ahead with these cuts since they've already been legislated. The analysis was commissioned by the Greens, whose leader Adam Bandt joined me a short time ago. I began by asking for his reaction to the fact the government is showing no signs of changing its position on the Stage 3 tax cuts.
Well, I just don't accept that. These tax cuts for the wealthy aren't just unconscionable, they're unaffordable and they're unsustainable. Labor's ripping over $300 billion out of the budget to give tax cuts to the wealthy while leaving people in poverty and renters in crisis. Whatever they said before the election, the situation now is dire. We're in a housing crisis where people are sleeping in tents and sleeping in their cars. People can't afford to pay the rent. People are skipping meals just to keep a roof over their head. We need to spend this money now on lifting people out of poverty and helping renters and people dealing with rising cost of living, not on giving tax cuts to politicians and billionaires. And I think the sooner that the government realises that, the better for everyone in this country.
The income tax receipts are still forecast to grow by around $30 billion out to 2026, 27. That's after the Stage 3 tax cuts have come into force. You've still seen growth of that magnitude. It's clear the Prime Minister intends on doing both here.
Look, this will turbocharge inequality in our society. The top 1% of income earners get the same wealth, the same benefit over the bottom 60% combined. Men get twice as much as women out of this. And if you're on minimum wage, you get nothing. But if you're a politician or a billionaire or someone earning over $200,000, you get $9,000 a year. There's just no case for it. That money should be spent on things like dental into Medicare or funding a rent freeze. But as things stand, these Stage 3 tax cuts sit like a massive black hole in the middle of the budget, sucking in other programs because of their massive gravitational pull. The budget is making way for tax cuts for the wealthy instead of increasing social services that would help make Australia a fairer place and help people deal with the cost of living crisis. And that is a fundamental reality Labor cannot avoid.
Do you accept the argument that some are making that these tax cuts are blowing out is misplaced, given the upward revision is really just based on an upward revision in terms of forecasts for the income tax take, which means you've got strong employment numbers and growing wages. So if those numbers are growing, so then does the revenue foregone from the Stage 3 tax cuts. It means there's a healthy economy.
Well, wages are still growing below inflation, meaning many people are still being pushed further and further behind. And in Labor's budget, unemployment is set to grow. I think this government just does not understand how serious the housing crisis is in particular. The Reserve Bank has pointed to rising rents as a big factor on its mind. This is crushing people. People are being hit with massive rent increases that mean many of them are being forced to move out of their homes. We know for a lot of people, buying a house is now put beyond the realms of possibility for them in their minds. Even renting now near where you work or where you study or where your family is becoming hard for many people. I think the government just doesn't get that. And if they're making the case that, well, look, it's okay, wages are growing and so we don't need to revise it, well, people are still going backwards in real terms, and rents are growing at 6 times faster than wages. So whatever the numbers are that the government might point to, the pressure on the rental side and on the inflation side is much worse.
Do you think bracket creep is an issue, though. The RBA in its recent minutes said that household disposable income had also been falling in real terms given high inflation, rising interest rates and the effect of bracket creep on income tax payments as nominal incomes rise. Do you accept that bracket creep is an issue?
Well, these tax cuts aren't about dealing with bracket creep. If you wanted to deal with bracket creep, there are ways that you could do that. But what you wouldn't do, if your concern was about dealing with bracket creep, is say someone on the minimum wage gets nothing, but Clive Palmer gets $9,000 a year. I mean, that's what these tax cuts do. They were never legislated to deal with bracket creep. Labor and Liberal voted for them in the full knowledge that the money would go to the wealthy and that it would dismantle Australia's progressive tax system. This isn't like, if they want to have a discussion about bracket creep, put some options on the table to deal with that, but that's not what this is.
Since 2019-2020, though, 500,000 people have moved into that 30 cents in the dollar bracket. That's 500,000 people paying more tax that will pay less under these stage 3 tax cuts.
But again, I make the point that I've heard the Prime Minister say that somehow the benefit for these extends down to people who are on $45,000. But look, if you're an average income earner, you might get out of these tax cuts, if you're earning about $80,000, you might get somewhere around about $17 a week. But someone who's a millionaire gets 10 times that, right? That's not... millionaires don't need reform to deal with bracket creep. Billionaires don't need a $9,000 a year handout. That's the fundamental reality. And however Labor tries to dress it up, whatever numbers they try to use, whatever retrospective justifications they try and come up with, it is clear that this will set Australia on a road to US-style inequality and rip over $300 billion out of the budget that could be getting dental into Medicare or funding a rent freeze.